Each of the following 6 fortunes began with something considered worthless: a rock, a failed spring, an expired cleaning product. None of it was built to make anyone rich. The Pet Rock. In the spring of 1975, Gary Dahl, a freelance advertising copywriter in Los Gatos, California, was drinking with friends who spent the evening complaining about their pets: the walking, the scratched furniture, the constant upkeep. Dahl remarked that he had none of those problems since his own pet was a rock. It required no food, no exercise, and it would never die. What began as a passing joke became, within months, one of the most improbable fortunes in American retail. Dahl went home and drafted a 32-page instruction manual detailing the rock's care, including tricks it had ostensibly already mastered, such as sitting and playing dead. He sourced smooth stones from Mexico's Rosarito Beach for less than a penny apiece, packaged each one in a small cardboard box lined with straw and perforated with air holes, and debuted the product at a gift trade show in San Francisco that August. Neiman Marcus ordered 1,000 units. Bloomingdale's followed. By the holiday season, Dahl was reportedly moving up to 100,000 rocks a day, and by the time the fad collapsed the following February, he had sold roughly 1.5 million units at $3.95 apiece, netting several $million in under a year. The success proved impossible to repeat. Later ventures, including a novelty sand breeding kit and a self-published advertising guide, went nowhere, and for the rest of his life Dahl remained known, professionally and otherwise, as the man who sold rocks. The Slinky. In 1943, Richard James, a mechanical engineer at a Philadelphia shipyard, was developing torsion springs meant to stabilize sensitive naval instruments aboard warships in rough seas. During testing, one of the springs slipped off a shelf and, rather than collapsing, stepped downward in a series of controlled arcs before righting itself on the floor. His wife, Betty, spent the following year searching for a name that captured the motion, eventually settling on Slinky. The couple borrowed $500 to start a company, and in November 1945 secured a demonstration slot at Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia. The toy sat unsold on a display shelf until a demonstrator set it walking down an incline. The 400 units sold out in 90 minutes at $1 apiece. Within 2 years, the company had sold more than 100 million. By the late 1950s, sales were declining, and Richard, increasingly entangled with an evangelical group his wife considered a cult, began donating large sums of company revenue to it. In February 1960, he told Betty he was relocating to Bolivia to work for the organization, leaving her with 6 children and a company nearly $1 million in debt. Betty divorced him, took over the business, relocated it to Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, and ran it for the next 38 years. Richard died in Bolivia in 1974. By the time Betty sold the company in 1998, more than 300 million Slinkies had been sold worldwide. Play-Doh. By the early 1950s, Kutol Products, a Cincinnati manufacturer of wallpaper cleaner, was approaching insolvency. The post-war shift from coal furnaces to gas and oil heating had eliminated the soot buildup the product was designed to remove, and by 1954, the company's usual pre-Christmas orders failed to materialize. Its survival came down to an unlikely source: Kay Zufel, a nursery school teacher and sister-in-law of Kutol's owner, Joe McVicker. Having read that wallpaper cleaner could double as a modeling compound, she tested a batch on her students, observed their enthusiasm, and urged McVicker to reposition the product as a children's toy. The reformulation was minimal. The detergent was removed, an almond scent and coloring added, and McVicker initially proposed calling it Kutol's Rainbow Modeling Compound. Zufel rejected the name and suggested Play-Doh instead. The product that had sold as a cleaner for 34 cents a can now sold as a toy for $1.50, manufactured on the same equipment in the same factory. A promotional agreement with television host Captain Kangaroo, who mentioned the product on air twice weekly for a percentage of sales, accelerated distribution, and by 1964, the company was selling 1 million cans a year. Liquid paper. In the early 1950s, Bette Nesmith Graham was working as a secretary at a Texas bank and struggling with her typing accuracy. Having watched sign painters correct their mistakes with an additional coat of paint, she began mixing white tempera paint in her kitchen blender and carrying a small bottle of it to the office to conceal typing errors under the name Mistake Out. The bank later dismissed her for devoting excessive time to the project, a decision that would prove costly to her employer. Graham patented the formula, renamed it liquid paper, and employed her son Michael and his friends at $1 an hour to fill old nail polish bottles by hand. By 1968, she had built her own headquarters and production plant in Dallas, and by 1975, that plant was producing 25 million bottles a year, controlling a substantial share of the market. In 1979, with her health declining, she sold the company to the Gillette Corporation for $47.5 million plus royalties on future sales. 6 months later, at 56, she died of a stroke. Her son, who had filled correction fluid bottles as a boy for $1 an hour, was Michael Nesmith of the Monkees. The inheritance he received from his mother's invention later helped finance some of the earliest experiments in music video production shortly before the format was adopted industry-wide. Beanie Babies. Ty Warner's path to a toy fortune began after a brief, unsuccessful attempt at acting and a subsequent job in plush toy sales at the Dakin Toy Company. In 1986, he mortgaged his house and used the proceeds to found Ty Inc., producing small stuffed animals filled with plastic pellets rather than conventional stuffing, giving them a distinctive, floppy quality. In 1993, the company launched Beanie Babies at roughly $5 a piece. What followed was not accidental. Warner deliberately restricted supply, shipping retailers fewer units than they ordered, and discontinued individual designs on an unpredictable schedule rather than a fixed seasonal calendar. The resulting scarcity turned an inexpensive toy into a collector's commodity. Certain retired designs later resold for thousands of dollars on the secondary market. By 1998, Ty Inc. was generating an estimated $1.4 billion in annual revenue, and a national survey found that at least 64% of American households owned at least one Beanie Baby. Warner's net worth crossed the billion-dollar mark. The strategy that built his fortune later exposed him to consequences of a different kind. In 2013, federal prosecutors charged Warner with tax evasion after he concealed more than $100 million in Swiss bank accounts. He pleaded guilty the following year, paid a $53 million fine, and was sentenced to probation. He retains ownership of the Four Seasons Hotel in New York, acquired with proceeds from the toy line. The $1 Million Homepage. In August 2005, Alex Tew, a 21-year-old business management student at the University of Nottingham, launched a website consisting of a single blank canvas of 1 million pixels arranged in a 1,000 by 1,000 grid. Advertisers could purchase blocks of 100 pixels for $100 each, embedding a small image and a hyperlink that would remain in place indefinitely. Early sales came from friends and family, but a press release picked up by the BBC accelerated the project considerably. Within 2 months, the site was drawing 100,000 visitors a day, and more than half the available pixels had sold. At the height of the surge, Tew was earning as much as $100,000 in a single day. By January 2006, with only 1,000 pixels remaining, he auctioned the final block on eBay. 11 days later, it sold for $38,100, bringing his total revenue to $1,037,100. He had been broke on August 26th. By January, he was not, and by the end of the semester, he had withdrawn from university altogether. Combined, those 6 ideas, a rock, a spring, an expired cleaner, a bottle of paint, an underfilled toy, and a grid of pixels, generated well over $2 billion.